We've got Afke here, and she is going to be talking to us about fermentation and preserving the harvest.
Fermentation, it's cabbage time, but is cabbage really the only thing that you can ferment successfully? No, there's tons. Theoretically, every vegetable can be fermented. And what fermentation does, the first thing that comes to mind, it makes your produce last longer. You can store it for years if you really wanted to. I'm not a fan of storing things for years, but I'm a fan of making sure that every fall, every season, you keep in mind that there's a time when it won't grow. Like Canada's got a pretty darn short growing season, don't we? So we want to make food last. So the best things to do is either you can, you freeze, or you dehydrate. Our product is made on the principle of low heat and dehydration.
What is the low heat in your dehydrator?
There's this and there's that. I chose to dehydrate what's the most effective way and the safest thing. So for dehydration, it says, oh, it has to be body temperature, which is like, what, 106 degrees Fahrenheit? I have found that that is dangerous. For instance, if you put your dehydrator full of plums, let's say plums are coming, grapes, hard to dehydrate grapes. But I find when you've got that full, it takes way too long to get the humidity down, and it starts to either ferment or you open yourself right up to mold. Too slow. Because it makes a little skin, you know, if you've ever seen something like fruit or so, it's sealed. And then the skin on one side, the cut where you took out the pit, and the other side, it almost seals shut, and it takes twice as long to dry, and by that time it's molded. Or at least there's mold bacteria in there. And mold is a real problem. So what we do, we gave it a quick 140 degrees for an hour, so that the whole plum is heated through and soft. After that, the temperature goes down to 120. And it's been shown, and you can find this on the websites of Excalibur, who really sells a very good dehydrator. Yeah, they're wonderful. That's how I started my business. We had 7 dehydrators going in the basement of our house at one point. And I had to flip the sheets at 2 o'clock at night. I had to get up every night to flip the sheets so that they would dry evenly. The center section in that is a little warmer, right? And the back is warmer. There's where the element is and the fan is. So I was pretty dedicated. And I just thought, I'm going to do this for a few years, some travel money, yada, yada, yada. And here we are 15 years later. We're in 80 stores. And it's easy for us to get things on the store shelves because it has a long shelf life.
Yes, but how do you produce all that you produce, even with that many dehydrators?
We have a commercial dehydrator this big and this wide, and it's got 14, trays. And we've got it down to fine science. Like the important part with dehydration, whether you do apple leather or fruit leather, that it's even. You need to spread it at the same thickness, because if you've got thicker parts, it'll take way longer, and then the outside ones, they're hard and crunchy, in the middle they're still soft. Mold comes to mind again, right? So we have actually a mold, like MOULD, to make these the same size and even. And then we use a drywall spreader, just go like this, pop them in, and it's beautifully orchestrated. It's got a computer, and
So the thing is only about
yeah. So even spreading is the secret to proper dehydration. And certainly when you have things like pears, apple slices, it's important. use a little tool. You know those little apple ring things, imagings, that it takes the core out and slices them? The cat's meow if you want to dehydrate apples. Really is. And I don't dehydrate things unless it's organic. Because the outside, it just makes it worse. Like, a bunch of toxins on a kid's snack. Hello. Like, how did we ever think that was a good idea? To spray crops continually.
Money.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah. Preservation. And yeah, you lose. Nobody wants to have bugs and little cherry worms. Things, you know how that goes. So dehydration, it's start, experiment, and buy a good book or go to somebody who's done it for years and knows the pits.
So, do you have those molds made?
Yes, they're made here in Salmon in the industrial complex. Awesome. They were so helpful because they'd never done this before. And it was amazing. And
Is it like one big tray or you have a whole bunch of little ones?
no, I have a mold that size, I think it's 28 inches by 40 inches, so that's how big the trays are. And he made a mold exactly to fit that. Exactly right. So then we can spread them all evening. My daughter has that whole thing full in about 45 minutes. Spreading. And when I first started, I was out there doing this thing with the baker spreading, and my husband looks at me, you think you're going to be making money at this? You know? But, so anyways, we are making money. It's gone down a little bit, the profits, because the prices, of course, are going up and up and up.
Yeah, I've noticed.
$29 a bag for flax from the prairies. That same bag is now $49. Nuts and seeds,
I know.
and we sprout the nuts and seeds. You see, so that it's kind of more bioavailable. That your body doesn't have to go through that layer of lectin that's on all the nuts and seeds. But that's a separate story. But so locally owned, locally distributed, our food is a growing concern. And just to show you the difference between what the farmers get paid and what distribution costs for all the other ingredients, it's a wonder those guys still get up in the morning. It's hard work to garden and to farm. And the second generation, they often, many farms do not have a son or a daughter that is going to carry on. So, do we need to worry about food security? Yeah. Do we need to get back to the times how it used to be? Where people know how to preserve, where people know how to put a seed in the ground, how to store it, all of these things, all this knowledge, I think, is just rising to the top. And it needs to be. And it needs to be. So I'm not particularly anxious about where we are, because we have so many incredibly skilled people and so many young families buying acreages to farm and to grow food and to feel safe. They build a safety net for their kids, and they usually grow way more than they need. I mean, I've been exchanging things for eggs, I've been exchanging product for services. It's a wonderful sense of community, and this is where it starts. And if I go back to the little service up there, what the community of Gander did for people that were stranded, I think is a huge example to what we can do to help people survive difficult times. Okay, back to fermentation. We are putting long life to cabbage. So, the fermentation, it is the lactic acid in vegetables that makes it ferment, just and fruit. With sauerkraut, all I do is I slice it, I have a food processor, and I push it through and slice it. You know, if you're lucky to be a descendant of Ukrainian or East European people, that the only thing they brought, some of them, was that cabbage slicer, like the big wooden one. I have seen them at the fairs. And I thought, wow, I wish I had one of those. It's like basically a giant mandolin. And I do have a little cheap little Kmart mandolin because they're super cool when you just slice carrots in little things, all the same size. Because preservation of like carrots and freezing some for soup, it's awesome. That you can just go to your freezer and freeze. Yeah. So you can put carrots, beets, kale even, but not too much because the taste changes. You can look at kimchi, which you can buy in the store. It's basically a vegetable ferment that is made around here now, but it used to come mostly from India and Japan. The same with soy, but please buy organic soy. Soy is so sprayed, GMO soy, GMO beets, GMO whatever, GMO canola oil is an awful thing to have in the house. So, anyways, vegetables, fruits, almost all ferment. Yeah, I make kombucha. That's amazing. And of course, kombucha is a different story. So, finish up with the fermentation. I knead or I pound that cabbage until the juices come out. Add a little bit of salt, doesn't need much, but get rock salt, which is pure. You know, your pickling salt. So I knead that, or you pound it with something wood or a mallet until the juices come out. Once the juices, you can actually squeeze it and the juice comes out. I put it in quart jars. You'll be fine with a big crock, but you have to make sure it's like really covered with the brine, that you have enough juice, which is in the brine, that cabbage never comes above. It needs to be covered, and there in the olden times with the crock, the lid of the crock pots would be wooden, and they probably would put a cheesecloth around that wooden thing, and then they put a bit of brick on it, a couple of solid big leaves, and then a lid so that the actual cabbage will always be in the brine. If it comes out of the brine, you have the potential of getting mold. That said, you can take off the mold and you will find that underneath of it is perfectly beautiful cabbage.
I got some things for the quart jars from Lee Valley. They have their own little glass weight. And
They
then
call it
little
a
thing.
pickle pebble.
Yeah, and then a blue thing with a hole in it.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
So that if you go anytime fermenting tools, you have huge resources. I love the little glass pickle pebbles because they keep it down. I used to put little rocks in it, like I clean them, scrub them, boil them, whatever, and the rock would do it.
Yeah.
Of course, it never really fits beautifully. But the trick is when I pound my quart jar full enough so that the juice almost comes out, then I have a whole leaf, I fold it and push it under like the rim, and that usually does the trick. But I find those little pickle, those little glass, and you can clean them so beautifully, right? So you have to make sure that you're in somewhat of a sterile environment, and you don't want to have dirty hands. But what I did read, if you're going to add carrots to it or beets, scrub them, don't peel them, because there's still some wonderful soil microbes and bacteria on that carrot that is helping to increase the variety of bacteria in your sauerkraut, in your fermented foods.
Isn't it going to take the microphone off?
No, never. I mean, they're so small. If you think that in a teaspoon of soil, there is millions of them. In a teaspoon of cabbage, you have the same amount of culture of bacteria that you go to the health food stores and pay $45 for in probiotics. It is amazing how much of the good bacteria are available to you in a teaspoon of sauerkraut. How do I use my sauerkraut? Sometimes a teaspoon over my salad. Sometimes it's in a sandwich. I mean, there's more to sauerkraut than just a wiener in a bun, right? And so there's, once you have it in the house, sometimes my grandchildren, they just go scoop it out and eat. And homemade sauerkraut is nothing like what you buy from Mr. Biggs. It's fresh. You can buy some really nice original sauerkraut in import stores, like the Windmill here is one resource where they have German-made sauerkraut, which is at least not processed. I remember doing a workshop on making sauerkraut, and we do them in our kitchen, and it's bring your jars, bring a cabbage, and we make it. I show people how to do this because it's a lot of times that this is so new to a lot of young moms. They're a little hesitant because they think that if they do something wrong, they're going to kill their kids or something, or at the very least give them a case of whatever. And so we do a show and tell, and then they go home with this jar or 2 jars, whatever we do. We have a big thing going. We've got women kneading and pounding, and it's great fun. And there's usually someone who brings a bottle of wine too. I mean, I can't help it what people bring to my workshop. So it's social, it's interactive. You learn new skills, and my fee, just give me what you think it's worth by donation. Now, I can't look in people's pocketbook, but it's important that they learn to be self-sufficient, and we have joy doing it. So this is kind of the pattern that we follow. And it's been huge fun, and it's been pretty darn popular.
You still get courses?
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I ask people to organize themselves and to bring friends. I don't organize it, and I need 6 people total. 6? Yeah. And I would think most people have 6 friends or neighbors that you can rustle up with 6 people. Because I don't have time to do that bookkeeping. Just give me a date when you can put 6, 7 people together and bring some glass jars, and away we go.
Well, for beets?
Yeah, yeah, pickling beets. I don't ferment beets.
Oh.
I'm not a pro at that because I think of beets and spicy beets with some cinnamon and cloves kind of stuff. That's like canning, right? But you know what? We'll read up on it and we'll give it a try. What's to lose?
Ferment.
Yeah, the fermented beets. What I've done is I grate a little bit of beet in my sauerkraut. And you get this beautiful, red, vibrant sauerkraut that's delicious. And the more root crops you add to your ferments, the better it tastes, the better it's for you. I mean, some people put, what's that spicy root again? Horseradish. Yeah, celery. Your celery root. I love celery root. It makes the best creamy soup. Like, buy those big, ugly little celery roots when you see them at the farmer's market. They are amazing. And so I want to experiment big time this fall. So if you guys can rustle up some friends, we do some workshop and we go at it and try. I've got some equipment, but hey, we need to improve our knife skills. I have a really good knife sharpener. You can bring your own knife if you want to, and I don't guarantee anything. I don't have workman's compensation, but you're on your own when you lose a finger. So I'm figuring that's how we need to roll. Yeah. Yeah. Put it in the jar. Put it in your crock pot. 10 days usually. You check it, you taste it, depending on the temperature. It is not good to ferment vegetables when it's too hot. I noticed that. The same goes for sprouting. Fall weather. I put it in my basement. If it's cool, I have it on the counter. Keep an eye on it because sometimes it runs away with you. Some juices overflow and it makes your house super stinky. You go through a period where it's like, my daughter threw a batch out. I was on vacation And I had just made, I think, 5 jars or so, which is probably 3 heads of cabbage. And she said, Mom, oh, I had to go through the house. I put it upstairs in the TV room to find where the smell was coming from. And of course, there were 5 jars all overflowing a little bit, the juices in a tray. Oh, you can smell it for sure. What died here?
But it's interesting you
Pardon me? 10 days, depending again on the temperature. But you can let it go longer. But once you said 10 days, 12 days, looks good, feels good, I just put the lid on and put it in a cool room. Then it's done. It stops fermenting. But the cool room, by the time fall comes around, our cool room is very cool enough. If you think it's not cool enough, just put it in the fridge so that it stops the fermentation process. Years, technically, but I think you should have most of it finished by the time the spring comes around. Yeah. And don't can it after it's fermented. Like, that's not, you want to keep, it's what it is, you want living organism, because when something ferments, it's actually a living, natural process, right? So that's the
It
idea.
surprises me that you said not to do it in hot weather, because I would have thought the hotter it is, the more it would work. But I tried to make some ginger beer, because someone brought some to the picnic, and it wouldn't bubble. Yeah, I was doing it in that hot weather.
Yeah, not there you go. I do a lot of sprouting, like, you know, sulfur sprouts and things like that. Summer goes mushy just before you know it. And I usually do this on the sink so that I remember to rinse it morning and night. When it's hot weather, forget it.
Now's the best.
And now think of it, in the spring, when do seeds begin? In the earth, you know, usually 12 degrees or the soil, but it's never hot. You try starting seeds in the garden when it's really hot, oh man, no, what to wet. Like that's what we had this spring, didn't we? So cool is the ticket for fermentation. Not cold, cool. And in the dark, yeah, maybe. It hasn't made a difference. I've not bothered. So the next super quick thing that to ferment is kombucha. Don't spend $3 on a little thing of kombucha in the store, or more. I think it's probably $4 by now. I have kombucha going, not so much in the summer, although it's very refreshing drink. But tea, you buy green tea, and I buy organic green tea. I use organic sugar, and you steep the tea until it's nice and strong, 8 bags in 4 cups, something like that. And at that point, you stir after, you know, when it's hot, you stir so that the sugar is dissolved, and you let it cool.
But aren't you supposed to have a mushroom?
Yes, coming up. Coming up. You need to have what they call a SCOBY, or a mother, as, you know, like a fermenting starter. And I have tons of them, because by the time you've done a couple of batches, that mother gets thicker and thicker because it grows a new skin every time. And you can also order them online. They come in dried form. You can actually try them. But I have had SCOBYs in my fridge for half a year in leftover kombucha. And they don't go bad.
Because I got one in my fridge. I used to make it.
Well,
And
there
I
you go.
haven't used it. Oh my God. It could be even 2 years, but for sure a year. Well, it'll still
If you had a big jar of them that we call the SCOBY Hotel, because
Yeah.
you know we separate them and put it in there, and anytime anybody wanted
I know.
them, they were
It's
forever
cool.
giving them away.
Yeah.
And once you want to do the second ferment, this is where it becomes fun. And if what I do is, once it's ready, like every, I think a week again, already you could really taste. Like most of the sugar is gone, because the fermentation process actually eats up the sugar. It disappears. The sugars, they change. And because I always say, whoa, a whole cup of sugar, I panic the minute there's a cup of sugar in a recipe, right? But you need it for the fermentation process. And so let's say by day 10, and when I want to check my kombucha and I do a gallon jar, I don't want to mess around with a full gallon jar that has a SCOBY on top. I just stick a straw in it, like one of those, check it. Yeah, oh, that's it. Oh, my problem. I'm lucky not I've kicked it over. And check it. And because everybody likes a different kind of tartness to their kombucha. I usually a week, 10 days, and I don't even write the dates on it anymore. You just check it. It's just like, cooking. It needs a little salt, needs a little acid, a little bit of this. It's a bit, dead. Throw in a tomato for the, right, that's how I roll. And because I think that is so important, we learn that skill and said, okay, it's missing something. What is it? It's usually not salt. It needs some acid. Because those 5 flavors, they all complement, supplement one another. Most good dishes, especially when it comes to soups, need at least those 5 flavors. The pungent, like your garlic and your onions, and then even celery belongs to that one. Then you have some sweet, you have some sour, you have some spice. I'm missing one. Bitter. That's right, the bitter. And balances it.
Like the vinegar in borscht, that's the bitter.
You got it. Pardon? You can, you bet. I don't know if you can ferment garlic. I imagine you can, but I received some pickled garlic from a friend, and it's awesome. I can eat it like candy, and then I have to sleep in that bedroom. So, what else can you ferment? Well, your carrots, your beets, and nice thing to do with fermentation is to add herbs or add spices, like your juniper berry. I love fennel with you think, cloves for beets, cloves and cinnamon. So experiment. Go online and say spices for sauerkraut. You'll get a beautiful list. I have the book, Fermentation from Sander Katz, which is just amazing. He goes to all over the world what people are doing with ferments. So dairy, yogurt, if you can get, raw milk, but you can make yogurt with store-bought milk too. But our neighbors up the road have a milking cow, so I have access to raw milk. And you just heat it, put a starter in of an old batch of yogurt, and away we go. Cottage cheese, all of these things, it is not rocket science to do this. And if you know the difference between milk and yogurt, like I see the price of yogurt and I'm thinking, whoa, if you have a family, that's a lot of money. So I can't do a lot of dairy. Like I have a big frog in my throat this morning because I had 2 helpings of yogurt. Because I made it. I hate wasting food. So then I eat it. And then yesterday I thought, now I'm like, dairy does it to me every time. Even the yogurt. Because I had some bread too. I came home, a piece of bread. No better. But this is real. That's how life works, right? Sometimes you come home and say, oh, that smells good. That's just what I want to have. So, any more questions on fermentation?
Can you ferment beets? Or what do you do about it? I guess you make.
Well, one of our crackers is made with zucchinis. We usually have 25 zucchini plants going. So our cheese crackers, I use it for crackers. Yeah. Yeah, for baking. Yeah. 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 works great. So if you want to, like what I do with some of them, I get a mandolin slicer at a certain thickness, I slice them all, I put a marinade on them and dry them as chips. Zucchini chips. I've done a honey mustard kind of type of dressing, and if you want to do like honey mustard chicken, find a recipe for honey mustard chicken. Put that on your zucchini, and away you go. I slice the zucchinis, like in little round chips.
I could do that.
Very fast.
Mustard,
Yeah. Yeah. I use potato and zucchini patties. You can grate potatoes and zucchinis with some onion and parsley, grate it. You put an egg in it or some oatmeal, whatever, so it sticks together. Away you go. Fry them up. Yeah. It's a good soup base too. If you want a cream soup, add some zucchini. But I find freezing them, or they get mushy. Fermenting them, you can't really, you need crisp. Yeah, they get soft and like slimy. Yeah. So, no.
do you put them in the noodles?
Yeah. And you bet, I buy them at the health food stores. I pick a lot of things, but not elderberries. Well, do you know what? Because you don't need very many. Not, yeah. So if that's good, and because I know we do a lot of talking, and I really want to show you some of the things that are happening now in nature that are great. So, who knows what these are?
Elderberries.
Elderberries. Sambuca nigra, this one. This is Sambuca canadiana.
Is that mild?
Yes, both of them are.
I have
Fortunately,
a hat that says elderberries have more fun than younger berries.
yeah, I'll support that notion. I have a family that right down the road from us who planted an elderberry hedge around their house 12 years ago. They're that high now, very prolific, and they're quite beautiful. These guys too, you can find them as an ornamental in the nurseries, but don't just go out and buy them. Anybody, when you see a tree, you can dig up root, you can start cuttings from this year's growth. And so I planted quite a few around our shop. So I now have access to these ourselves, but I feed their horses at the moment, so I can pick away at all the elderberries we want. So what I do is I go there with scissors and just cut this, like I go like this, close to the stem. Because as you know, the stem and leaves from elderberry plants are slightly toxic. So if your little 3-year-old would just munch away at these, he won't munch away very long because they don't taste very good. But he would get a sore tummy. And the elderberries, they made it in September's Alive magazine as the top 12 antiviral foods. And I'm always told you can't make any medical claims. And I'm thinking, yeah, they prove this. This is scientifically proven. There is people working hard to get all this stupid information about medical claims. And it's not true. This is supportive of our immune system, very supportive. When you have sore throats, colds, get into the elderberry juice.
Oh, that's what you do. You make
That's
juice.
what I make juice, because
And then
it is
can it?
best to cook it. Yes, you can. The best tool for you to get a lot of elderberry juice real fast is to get one of those steam juicers.
Do you make elderberry shrub as well?
I pick shrubs.
No. It's called elderberry shrub. And
Oh,
it's
yes.
kind of semi-fermented.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
You
thought-
can.
Yeah.
Yes, and they sell them like there's an elderberry farm right here in Seminar. And they sell the shrub, they sell tinctures. Like you can buy, I mean, but the little bottles, they're 25 bucks. So I'm thinking, I think I'm gonna do my own. And you can bottle them.
So the steamed juice is tart.
Oh yes, bitter and tart.
So how do you use it? Just drink a little bit of an ounce of it?
Well, I make homemade chocolate and I put elderberry juice in. It's amazing. And then I put some cayenne there and a little salt. Like our chocolate is rocks it. We always have chocolate in the fridge along with homemade mayo and some pesto. And sometimes it's the first thing that my daughter has when she comes to work in the morning. That's it, have chocolate. Now this guy, if you want to grow your own, I would suggest that instead of elderberries, you plant aronia bushes.
Oh,
Now, as you can tell, these are almost ready to harvest. They ripen a little before the elderberries, and I don't know, you can taste them. Yeah, let's taste them. Yeah. You've got that, so yeah, and because I pick these, and okay, you share.
these are expensive. Have you seen them?
Varieties.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks. And so they're about ready to go. So last year I made chutney. So I made chutney with elderberries. And so you just add some garlic, some onions, and sometimes I add some walnuts. And then you do some vinegar and you do sugar. So this elderberry, actually, I use it, I put it when we have stir fries, rice dishes, and like something that needs a lift. And it's amazing. So it's a quick and really effective food for us to have in the cellar. So that was that.
Then you can that. So
Yes.
you put that in the steamer and then
It's juice.
but you thicken it.
Yes. Yeah.
With the
Well, you know, when you have all of the elderberries and the skins, and it does have some seeds, you get a certain thickness going, right? And you add the onions.
You just put the
You know,
juice in the steamer.
it's not very thick, as you can tell.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I just scoop it and, you know, a little juice. I think of it like especially rice dishes and things. It's amazing. And very good with curries. Very good with curries. I use a lot of turmerics. Our little grandchildren, we make golden milk. Turmeric, yeah. Turmeric and some maple syrup, and they ask for it. And they have a gold, they get golden milk turmeric, and they know. And we actually put turmeric in our cheese crisps, and we put turmeric in our garden crisps. In the spicy carrot
One
crisps.
of these a cheese crisp?
No, I'll open one up. So, yeah, where's the yellow one?
The carrot?
Ah, you have the harvest crisp. Yeah. So if you look at these ingredients here, the first ingredients is let me see, carrots, and then zucchini, and then oh, no wonder I can't read it. It's the French part. And local cucumbers and zucchinis, ground flax, sprouted buckwheat, nutritional yeast, so you get your B12s, is very good for the vegans and the vegetarians, onions and tomato paste, apple cider vinegar, and then salt. Salt, garlic, mustard, smoked paprika, turmeric, and onion powder. So that's within these babies. Just food. And food that nourish our body to the point where every single cell in our body gets properly educated and knows. Well, the cells know what to do already, but oftentimes they're starving for the right stuff. And the garbage pickup doesn't come around because it doesn't have the energy to do that. So this is a problem. So if you think, can food be our medicine? Yeah, it can. At least 80% of it, or maybe even more. So So that's just this one. All the others, there's beets and onions. It's like, you know, the beet thing, the recipe really is basically a borscht recipe. But when we add the flax is actually the binder in our crisp. We grind the flax just before we mix it, because flax, once it's ground, it goes really, it loses its vitality very quickly. So if we sometimes we grind it ahead of time, a day ahead of time, and we put it in the freezer, and then add it to all those ground up vegetables that we put in there. So
For those crackers.
yeah, all of them. They have vegetables. Like pretty soon, the Mara Valley Organic Farm, they have grown 5,000 kilo carrots for us, all big juicy carrots.
Wildlife farm?
No, one in Mara. Wildflight Farm is more into markets, and there's a couple of farmers that grow specifically for stores and us. And we asked them in the spring, we need about, you know, between 4,000 and 5,000 pounds of carrots. They are pulling them out of the ground, usually October, and then all winter long. We are peeling them and juicing them. And we must peel them because there's organisms on the outside of a carrot. If you put it in kind of like a 120-degree dehydrator, if there's any bacteria left in there, especially organic, E. coli comes around, and you have no idea how fast bad bugs can multiply at that body temperature. So they get peeled. So we have to be.
Because you said before just scrub it.
That's fine for a homemade sauerkraut. No need to peel. But when you're commercial, and we have a lot of clients that depend on this food. We have a huge celiac community. We have had letters from young moms who said your food was the only thing that I could trust when I went through my breast cancer. So that's why we're passionate about keeping it safe and clean.
Well, I understand that exactly, but why do you not peel it for yourself? Is it not going to get those microbes multiplying?
Well, we eat our own food. I'm not making special batches just for us. It's there. We always have broken pieces. That's what we eat, and that's what my friends get lots of times too. So because you're on the market, you have to be so careful. And interior health comes knocking every year. Everything has to be up to snuff and fair. Like that's protection for us.
But isn't the point of the fermentation process is to allow you that range of what you want, raw and untreated, but kept in a way where it's not any bacteria
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, because
Yes.
that was what my mom always sort of sold us with her fermenting sauerkraut. Was like, well, she didn't can it because that killed the very thing that you were going for. So no.
Sure.
So it's the good bacteria.
Yes. But you understand that when you're in stores and sometimes people don't take care of it properly and they leave it on the counter and there's some residue there. And there's bacteria and microbes all around us. And I don't want to take that risk. Or gluten contamination. You talk to a celiac who eats something and they get very, very sick. So we are very much aware to have food available that is safe and that we actually do what we claim to do. And that's important. Because the food industry, I learned a lot in terms of what is safe. And the first 2-3 years, I understood the value of preservatives and chemicals in our food because big industry does that to protect themselves. Because we live in an environment that is microbes and bacteria, they're everywhere. And people are not as resilient as we used to be because farm kids, they rarely have allergies because they grow up with all that stuff. I have no food sensitivity, no allergies. And when I go to a doctor's office and you need to fill this list, what medication you're on, and none. And you know, then it is I'm so grateful to be so healthy for whatever I want to do. Because that's our energy motor, right? If we're not healthy, we don't have energy to follow our passions. So there we go. Quick, because I know the time is up.
Time is almost up. Anything we're wondering why you have some other things coming?
Oh yeah, so quick. I picked chamomile from our yard. I grow lemon balm, very prolific. Don't let it go to seed because you'll have lemon balm everywhere. But it's delicious. Like you can put this in smoothies, and I wouldn't be surprised if you could tuck some in fermentation. So lovely tea. It's a great evening tea. It's a great tea anytime, and I put it in my smoothies too when it's fresh. But I have a good supply going. Grow lots of mint. Mint is very healing, very refreshing, and I find I buy the green teas or black teas, and I almost always throw mint in it. It's a wonderful way to start your day. You know, nice and warm and fresh. And what it does with the vitamins and the polyphenols and the catechins, it gives your body a little rinse before you add food. So, you know, if you keep adding more food before your yesterday's meal is not properly digested, not good. So you need to just, clean up, nourish, balance, and cleanse, kind of the old Chinese principles. Weeding is very important before you're seeding, like putting more stuff in. And you sleep better, and your gut's happier. Yeah. The next ones that we tried here, the mint, stinging nettle, superfoods. You can put it in your smoothies. Some people, they just use it as spinach. And so I always have some mint. It's a full iron. I wear gloves. Okay. Yeah, I wear gloves.
You can eat it like after it's dry.
Yeah. Well, I have dried it, and then I just stuff it in without wearing something, and sure enough. Yeah. Yes. Who knows what this is?
Mullet.
Melon. Melon is what they call an expectorant. It pulls phlegm out of, and it cleans your lungs. It's been shown to actually help you prevent bronchitis when you have a really bad throat. I make tea. So, pardon? You can, like, your little yellow flowers. Now, this is a ditzy one because I think my husband got too close with the weed whacker. But you get the principle. They go this high in the summer. So the flowers and the leaves can both be used for this tea. You can buy melon tea in the health food stores, like Schuster Health. They've got a huge selection of all herbal teas that are really medicine. And know what you need. Read up on herbal teas that are medicine. There's lots of websites there you can find. So these, I just chop them in little strips, and I have them on a tray in my basement. Good ventilation. It's dry in a week or so, and then you just put them away. And I could be criticized for putting it in plastic Ziploc bags, but so that's kind of what I wanted to share.
Yeah, sometimes I do. I made a tincture for ears. I did an herb course once, and that's what I chose to make. I can't remember how I did it now, if it was just the flowers, but I never thought it had tea.
The melon tea, when my grandchildren, like first day of school, cold and coughing and stuff like that, and I think, kid, get over here. So she has to have 3 cups a day when she's staying with her grandma. And I could hear her cough getting better over the day, where it's not this dry cough, but it's like you actually can get rid of
Do you
phlegm.
put something in it other than mullet? Or like mix it with mint? Or do
You put some honey in. Some honey, you probably could put some mint in. A good suggestion, I haven't thought about that. So, because hint is refreshing. I'd like to drink it warm. Yeah, it's not bad. You get used to it. It's a funny thing. The tea tastes just like the smell. Like it's amazing. It's the same with elderberry. It's the same with every liquid. You smell it, you can smell the plant, and you can kind of figure out what it's going to taste like.
Okay, my question about the elderberries. Now, if you went to a nursery, you would probably get the decorative kind, not not the kind that you can eat.
Well, what you get is the dark-leaved, decorative kind, that beautiful pink blossoms in the spring. That's what I got in the nursery. But this is actually the most nutritious because it's dark. All dark.
That's what you got? That's the most nutritious?
Yeah, the
So
dark
it's-
one.
So it's
It's very pretty.
a decorative plant, but that you can eat the berries.
Look at some of our plants in the nurseries. They are usually from plants that grow in the wild, and they've changed somewhat. So they are so drought resistant. I haven't watered them once this year.
Wow. I do want
Great.
to start that.
They're great.
Can
Yeah.
you got lots?
Yeah,
Could I get a starter from you?
yeah, but probably in the spring. So you get into it, like my email is there, and when you want to order stuff, it's called orders at Okanagan Rossum, and otherwise it is Afke.
Oh, is it on here?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you write or email orders at Okanagan Rossum, I will reply to you.